Hello, welcome back to the Mass, the history of the Mass, the part 4, the underground, the Mass of the Catacombs. I call this unit part 4B. In the first part, we really concentrated more of our time on the effects the catacombs had on the development of the Mass. Now we will continue with elements of the catacombs which are very important to our heritage as Catholic Christians and ultimately for the Mass itself. In the catacombs, martyrs are buried who were killed during the cruel persecutions, as we said at the beginning of the last unit, the emperors Decius, Valerianus, and Diocletian. Now, around the tombs of the martyrs, a form of devotion developed rapidly among the pilgrims who left their graffiti and prayers at these exceptional burial places. The Christians tried to arrange the burial places of their deceased as close as possible to the martyrs' tombs, because it was thought this would also establish a mystical nearness in heaven. Some of the most important catacombs are the catacombs of St. Calixtus on the Via Appia Antica, the old Appian Way. These are the largest catacombs of the city. They originated as private tombs of the 2nd century and became the official tombs of the Roman bishops in the 3rd century. They extend over 4 floors, get this, 4 floors underground. Burial recesses carved into the rock line both sides of the corridors, some recesses that were created to hold many bodies for many members of the same family, have also been excavated. By way of a 4th century ladder, the crypt of the popes can be reached, one of the oldest nucleuses where various pontifical martyrs recorded in the Greek inscriptions were buried. Now this shows you an image of the Appian Way and of course a wall area of the entrance to the catacombs of St. Callistus. They're among the greatest and most important of Rome. They originated about the middle of the 2nd century and are part of a cemetery complex that occupies, get this, an area of 90 acres with a network of galleries about 12 miles long in 4 levels, more than 20 meters deep. In it were buried countless martyrs, 16 popes, and very many Christians. They are named after the deacon Calixtus, who at the beginning of the 200s was appointed by Pope Zephyrinus as the administrator of the cemetery, and so the catacombs of St. Calixtus became the official cemetery of the Church of Rome. In the open areas are 2 small basilicas, imagine, with 3 apses. In the eastern one were perhaps laid to rest Pope Zephyrinus himself and the young martyr of the Eucharist, St. Tarcisius. The underground cemetery includes several areas. The crypts of Lucina, in the area of the popes, and St. Cecilia are the most ancient areas, 2nd century. The other areas are named after St. Miltiades, half of the 3rd century, St. Gaius and St. Eusebius, end of the 3rd century, the western area, the first half of the 4th century, and the Liberian area, 2nd half of the 4th century. The St. Calixtus complex between the 2nd and 3rd mile of the ancient Appian Way is made up above-ground cemetery areas with an annexed ancient underground burial chamber that can be dated to the end of the 2nd century. These were originally independent from one another and were later connected to form one vast network of community catacombs. The complex owes its name to the Pope and martyr St. Calixtus, who before his papacy was entrusted by Pope Zephyrinus with the administration of the cemetery, which was considered the preeminent cemetery of the Roman Church, the burial place of many pontiffs and martyrs. One of the most ancient and important regions was that of the popes and of St. Cecilia. Along one gallery of this region, the cubicula called of the Sacraments developed. This is the first decades of the 3rd century, which preserved some of the most ancient paintings in the catacombs. In one crypt of the region, almost all the pontiffs of the 3rd century were buried. Fontaine, Anterus, Fabian, Lucius, Stephen, Sixtus II, Dionysius, Felix, and Eutychian. Next to the crypt of the popes, the crypt of St. Cecilia is found, to whom a cult was attributed, especially in the High Middle Ages. Some other regions with catacombs of importance are those of Pope St. Cornelius, who died in exile in Civitavecchia, Pope St. Miltiades, Pope St. Gaius and Eusebius, and the so-called Iberian Catacomb because of the many inscriptions from the area of Pope St. Liberius. Let's take some of these one at a time. The Crypt of the Popes, fascinating, most important and venerated crypt of the cemetery, called the Little Vatican as it was the official burial place of 9 popes and probably of 8 dignitaries of Rome's 3rd century church. In the walls you can still see the original inscriptions in Greek of 5 popes. On 4 tombstones near the name of the pope there is a title of bishop, since the pope was regarded as the head of the Church of Rome. He was indeed the bishop of Rome. And on 2 of them there is a Greek abbreviation, capital letter M, PT, for the word martyr. Here are the names of the 5 popes. We saw them: Pontianus, Atherus, Fabian, Lucius, and Eutychian. In the front wall was laid to rest Pope Sixtus II, a victim of Emperor Valerian's persecution. In front of his tomb, Pope Damasus in the 4th century placed a marble slab with a Latin poem celebrating the glorious memories of the martyrs and Christians buried in the catacombs, and there is a picture of that. This is the picture of the crypt of the Pope, so you can see all the burial places. Actually, there's another one up there, 4 high plus the area at the end. It originated towards the 2nd century, first as a private crypt. When the first area came under the direct dependence of the Church of Rome, it was thought suitable to transform that burial chamber into the cemetery of the popes. In its lower part, the crypt had 4 niches containing sarcophagi and 12 tombs, 6 on each side, 16 sepulchres in all. In front of the end wall, a table tomb, a mensa, was built. The sepulchres, now empty, once contained the remains of 9 popes and 8 bishops. Still seen are the original inscriptions on the wall, though broken and incomplete, regarding 5 of the popes. Their names are written in Greek, following the official language of the church at that time. Here there's someone's name, of course, and in pace, in peace. Here is another one, the word is lost, and these are the names that we talked about of popes buried there. Here is the chronological order of the names. I'm not going to go through them. You can look at them at your own leisure. The companions of Sixtus were 4 deacons: Genarius, Magnus, Vincent, and Stephen, who were martyred with him. The group of the elders who keep guard of the altars of Christ, the inscription says, are clear to the popes buried in this catacomb. The bishop who lived through the long peace refers to a pope who lived before the great persecutions roused by Diocletian between the end of the 3rd and the 1st years of the 4th century. He is either Fabian or Dionysius or Eutychian. The holy confessors sent to us from Greece are probably a group of martyrs: Martia, Neon, Hippolytus, Adria, Paulina, Martha, Valeria, Eusebius, and Marcellus, who were buried in the Calixtian complex. Here is the most fascinating story. This is the Crypt of St. Cecilia. Here is a close-up of her statue. She was martyred in the early church, beginning of the 3rd century and the early 200s. The rule of execution was that an executioner would strike only 3 times. And it was hoped by the 3rd strike he would have severed the head, but for St. Cecilia her head was not severed. And they had to leave her, so she was buried. Notice her fingers. The statue copied the way she was found. She was found this way. She has on one hand a single digit, indicating one God, on the other hand, Trinity, 3 persons. Her body was moved to the Church of St. Cecilia with a copy of the same statue you find in the catacombs. And here's a picture of the statue in the catacombs where they found her. Okay, beautiful story. There are what we call the cubicles of the sacraments, passing through imposing galleries full of loculi. There are 5 small chambers, family tombs, commonly known as the cubicles of the sacraments, and particularly important for their frescoes. Fresco is that style of wall painting that uses fresh plaster. So as the plaster dries, the colors are cured and saved. The frescoes can be dated to the beginning of the 3rd century, the 200s, and represents symbolically the sacraments of baptism, Eucharist. Also depicted is the prophet Zono, has always been a symbol of the resurrection. And there they are, look at these. There is a baptism, both of these are baptismal frescoes. Here is a picture of the Good Shepherd. It looks like this could be the woman taken with the hemorrhage touching Christ's robe, and here is the classic picture of the loaves and fishes. Here, as you can see one a little more clearly here. Here is, this one is over there. Terrific. We have this art from this period. We know what they believed. We've also discovered frescoes of the four apostles, Peter, Paul, John, and Andrew. It is said that these are the oldest images we have of these four. And there they are, painted above the, each of the corners have their images. That's a light fixture lighting up. So the catacombs offer us more than we ever imagined. Finally, there's a very interesting bit of evidence that we find in the catacomb of St. Priscilla. It's called in its Latin fractio panis. Fractio means a breaking, panis, bread, the breaking of the bread. It's a very good example of the painting of the Eucharist. And it reminds us of the important rite celebrated in all the tituli, all the paintings, in the various houses of the church, such as those which existed in Trastevere, which is that portion of Rome. We have where St. Cecilia is buried, Chrysogonus and Calixtus. The breaking of bread was not just the opening gesture of the agape, the love feast, but was surrounded by a complex liturgy. There were psalms, readings from the prophets, homily of the celebrant, as we've already seen. Now, returning to the painting of the Fractio Panis in the catacombs of Priscilla, the Eucharistic gesture is indicated and brought out well by the presence of the one shown seated at the head of the table in the banquet. In the ancient world, the most important person was seated at the head of the table. The presider at the feast in this picture holds a strange posture for a communal meal, but one very well suited to a Eucharistic celebration. His outstretched hands are breaking the bread. In front of him is a chalice. It is clearly a painting of a Eucharistic banquet. Many of the Eucharistic paintings reserved in the catacombs. Here it is. I mean, rather incredible. Here's the one we just talked about. It's rather clear here. You see the celebrant with the outstretched hands. Others around him at table. Here's another one very similar. Right? This is incredible that we have such evidence of the form of the Mass from these early days. Here are some more. Another Eucharistic. Here is a celebrant standing among others. There is the loaves and fishes that we're accustomed to seeing. Here is another Eucharist fresco. There it is right there in that particular area of these tombs that have been raided. We're really blessed as Christians and as Catholics to have this early affirmation of the rite of the history of the Mass. Here's yet another, like more tables or more areas that people worship at during the Eucharist. So I'll end this by speaking of from under the earth to above the ground. The next unit is the unit of the Mass of the Basilicas, perhaps the most fascinating part of the history of the Mass. So this ends the Mass of the Catacombs, part 4b, and B. You can go now to the Mass of the Basilicas, part 5a.